Rich people buy time, poor people sell time.
How many times have you heard some variation of this phrase? Don't sell your time for money.
You're exchanging your time for money. And what does that mean?
Trading your time for money is a sucker's bet.
I don't want to work anymore. I can't trade my dollars and hours. Our country wasn't founded on this concept of trading time.
I look at it as if you're trading your time for money, you're always going to be limited in how much money you can make.
This is a finance bro way of saying don't make money exclusively from a source where you get paid X amount of dollars for Y amount of work, which is basically every job. There are various reasons given for why selling your time for money is a bad idea. Like you only have so many hours in a day you can work, so A, trading your time for money limits your potential income, B, trading your time for money also makes you more financially vulnerable if you are unable to work, and C, it's really hard to sell a course on trading your time for money unless you're a college. Although maybe don't say that last one out loud. The alternative to trading your time for money is usually investing, starting a business, living a wildly alternative lifestyle, or some combination of all three of these things. But I am here to tell you that while this very broad phrase might have some merit in specific situations, it's probably very much complete bullshit, and you really shouldn't take anybody who says it too seriously. At best, the phrase "don't sell your time for money" is just another example of hustle bros needlessly bashing on regular day jobs that provide stable living to a majority of Americans. It also perpetuates the idea that simply working a full-time job is not good enough, and that a side hustle or whole extra business is mandatory to get ahead these days. They might not be wrong, but we will get to that later. Most importantly, the thinking behind the line of "don't sell your time for money" is just wrong. Without being a trust fund baby, there really is no way to reliably make money without investing some time. And more importantly, trading your time for money can be a genuinely great way to build wealth, so as long as you're doing it correctly. So it's time to learn how money works to find out why you should absolutely sell your time for money. The most common way people sell their time for money is by working at a job. The transaction of dollars per hour is very easy to see because it will be included in the employment contract and regular paychecks.
Problem? Well, the person at Starbucks gets paid by the hour. The person at the gas station gets paid by the hour. But guess what? Most doctors and lawyers also get paid by the hour.
An employer will buy an hour of time from an employee for a predetermined amount of money. This amount could be anything from minimum wage to hundreds of dollars an hour for highly skilled and very senior employees. Another increasingly popular way that people are selling their time for money is through gig work, which isn't as clear-cut as X amount of dollars for Y amount of hours, which means there's a chance for workers to take home less than the minimum wage for the hours they put in, but exploitive or not, gig work is just another way of selling time for money.
The gig economy could be a much better option for everybody if we untied the protections and benefits that we have created to support this full-time job.
Cool, great. I'm pretty sure you all know how jobs work, so why am I telling you about this in such basic detail? Well, because jobs are not the only way that we sell our time for money.
Sorry about that.
People will often spend hours clipping coupons, avoiding toll roads, and spending their weekends trying to sell used junk from around their house to make a few extra bucks, without realizing that the time they spent doing this was worth a lot more than the money they made, or saved. If they were doing this to have more money in their pocket at the end of the month, then they would have been better off picking up a few extra hours at work. I get it, some people work fixed schedules and don't have the option to pick up more work on a whim. But we have already seen that gig work has exploded in popularity, so that could offer an alternative. If you're a high-income earner, gig work might struggle to match your regular income, but then clipping coupons is likely to put you even further behind, and so will most other activities for that matter. Amongst financial professionals, there is a type of investor called the sophisticated idiot. A sophisticated or accredited investor is someone who has more than $1 million in assets outside of their primary residence, or earns more than $200,000 a year. American financial regulators have decided that people making this kind of money are smart enough to have enough financial security to make riskier, less regulated investments. Medical professionals, like doctors and dentists, fall into the sophisticated idiot category all the time, because they frequently make big investments that take up a lot of their time. A dentist developing an apartment complex might be able to make a lot of money, but investments like this can take hours of planning and oversight. Even if they are successful, they often walk away with less money than had they just taken on a few more cases and stayed in the operating room. Doctors and dentists are very smart people, but because they don't think they're selling their time for money, they often undervalue the money they could have made if they weren't trying to make passive income. Now, if you love flipping properties, selling stuff on Craigslist, or seeing how much money you can save at Walmart with your coupons, then by all means go ahead. But just remember, if you are only doing this to save money, then you are just selling your time for money in a different way, and probably not getting a great price for it in the process.
What do you want from me, man?
People not realizing that they are always going to be selling their time for money also make the exact opposite mistake to this. They overvalue their time. There are things you could do right now that would only take an hour and would save you a lot more money than you would make in an hour at work. Renegotiating insurance, utilities, and mortgages, canceling subscriptions you never use anymore, or applying for a new credit card with a sweet sign-up bonus. All of these will take a bit of time, but will put much more money back into your pocket than doing an extra hour in the office.
Because you waste time on things that never pay you.
This segues us nicely into the next reason why you should sell your time for money. It's going to be a better way to invest for a lot of young people. There are investments that are more passive than others. For example, if the doctor would have just used their money to buy a bunch of dividend stocks, then it would have likely only taken them a few hours to do some research and make the purchase trades to get a well-balanced portfolio that will pay them for decades to come. If a dentist could earn $1,000 an hour while practicing, and it took them 5 hours to consult with a financial planner that charged them another $1,000 on how to structure a $1 million stock portfolio, then the dentist would need to make up $6,000 for this to have been a good use of their time. A $1 million portfolio should return between $50,000 and $100,000 per year over the long term, so it would take roughly a month for the dentist to get ahead on this investment. This was a good way for the dentist to sell their time for money, and that's using very generous figures for how much that dentist could make at their practice. But the math doesn't work like this for most people. Most people earn much less, but also have less to invest. A regular professional making $15 an hour with $1,000 to invest really shouldn't overthink things. Even if they make phenomenal returns of 100% per year by day trading using techniques they picked up from some totally legit guy on the internet, that's still only $1,000 a year. And before you start talking about compounding returns in the comment section, may I remind you that the greatest hedge fund of all time only made 60% annualized returns before fees. So if you really think some random guy is going to make 100% annualized returns after watching a tutorial from some random guy on the internet, then I have truly failed to teach you how money works. Anyway, the problem is that because working for money gets such a bad rap, and passive income is continuously held up as the holy grail of financial success, a lot of people choose to make small investments with money that would have been way better spent increasing their earnings power. $1,000 can pay for qualifications to do a lot of jobs that pay significantly more than minimum wage. Now, I'm not talking about online courses or college degrees. I am talking about real work qualifications to do work that requires specialized training. If you have some technical skill, a coding bootcamp can get you an entry-level job as a software engineer. It might not be Google, but you could still be earning a lot more than minimum wage, plus the passive income from a $1,000 stock portfolio. Working on acquiring qualifications and marketable skills is not as sexy to most people as picking the next Tesla, but it's a much more reliable way to make money. And hey, once you are selling your time for more money, you can use that extra money to work on building passive income. But maybe you want to speed up this process by starting your own business. Well, then understanding that you are always selling your time for money is going to be even more important. In my career as an investment banker, I've been lucky enough to talk with a lot of successful company founders about what made their business work. Starting a business is always going to take a lot of time and energy, and as an early founder, you will need to accept that you are going to basically be doing everything, from the sexy stuff like product design and marketing to the boring stuff like accounting. As a business grows, a big mistake that a lot of business owners make is either trying to continue to do everything themselves or delegating away everything but the fun stuff. A business can only get so large before it can no longer be operated by a single person, and letting go of something that you control can be hard. The finance gurus are absolutely right when they say that you need to leverage other people's time and experience to scale a business, but this isn't the excuse to forgo the boring stuff either. If a business owner has a background in design and no experience at all in business management, then they should hire a business manager to delegate the day-to-day operations of the business to them, because their time is better spent designing new products. Similarly, if a business owner has a decade of experience as an operations executive and no experience whatsoever as a designer, they should hire a designer and delegate that work to them, even if they think they would have more fun thinking of cool new products. Understanding that you are always selling your time for money will really help you if you decide to go into business for yourself, because it will always remind you to stick to the tasks where you are worth the most, and delegate the tasks that you can't do to a professional standard even if you really want to. Despite the few stories of college dropouts starting billion-dollar companies, the average age of a billion-dollar founder is 47 years old, and that's because they spent decades in a career that gave them skills, which meant they could leverage their time to build a company worth $1 billion. So if selling your time for money is not such a bad plan, then why does every personal finance bro on the internet shit on it so much? Even the infallible Warren Buffett has been quoted saying that if you don't make money while you sleep, you will never be wealthy.
Oh, damn!
So are all of these guys wrong? Well, not really. But they aren't getting to the point I think they're trying to get across very well. And they are definitely reading their audience all wrong. Let's start with Warren Buffett. I struggled to find an instance of him actually saying this quote, so it's entirely possible that someone falsely credited him with this line and everybody else on the internet just went with it. But that doesn't matter. He has definitely said some similar things at one of his many talks. Anyway, he is totally correct. Wealthy people should have passive investments that make them money while they sleep. But that doesn't mean that the best way they become wealthy is by focusing on those investments. It's a classic rich people eat caviar, but eating caviar won't make you rich scenario. When Buffett gives his speeches, he's normally talking to rooms of Berkshire investors, or people that could afford to attend an event that Buffett was speaking at. They are by and large already selling their time for lots of money, so passive investing is the next step. Nobody is reasonably choosing between a $250,000 investment in Berkshire and a course that can make them an extra $20 an hour. Now, as for all the other financial influencers on the internet, at least 50% of them are just saying that earned income is trash and passive income is the bomb because they want to sell you a course on how to make passive income. I don't think anybody should be surprised by scams and dubious claims on the internet anymore. But what about the other 50%? The other 50% of people making personal finance content really are trying to do their best. But financial content given to a general audience can only be so good because, well, it's general advice. Invest into a portfolio that will make you passive income is not bad advice. And yeah, eventually, if you want to retire, you will need most of your money to come from a source that requires very little time input. The problem is that broad statements like this perpetuate the idea that making money one way is inherently good and making money another way is bad. This good advice makes no considerations for someone's age, qualifications, income, existing assets and liabilities, obligations, time horizon, and goals. You shouldn't watch a Dr. Mike video instead of getting a checkup, so you shouldn't watch a Graham Stephan video in lieu of making a personalized plan for improving your own personal financial situations. Unfortunately, not everybody can make money for doing nothing. The world does need people to work. No matter what you do, you are always going to be selling your time for money. It's up to you to make sure that you do everything you can to make the hours in your day a highly sought after and marketable product. You know you are a lazy person, and there are thousands of people who want to tell you exactly how to fix that. But the truth is, you are probably just fine, and falling too far into the productivity rabbit hole will just make you lazier, more stressed, and poorer than when you started.
Productivity.
Productivity.
Productivity. Productivity.
Productivity.
Productivity.
Productivity.
Productivity.
Productivity.
Modern life is full of an endless list of things to do. You spend a lot of time getting to a job, putting in your 8 hours a day if you are lucky, getting home again, and only then can you go shopping, clean your house, wash your clothes, pay your bills, cook, and help out your family with anything they need. Thanks to the rising cost of living and stagnating wages, you might also want to include a side hustle or a business project in addition to everything else. Oh, and at some point have some time to relax with friends and family or just get a good night's sleep. It's a lot. And us humans were not meant to be this switched on all the time. So to keep you on your grind and to help you feel a little bit less overwhelmed by everything that you need to do, there is a new movement of pseudo self-help gurus. These people promise to teach you simple tricks that conveniently fit into seminars, books, or 15-minute YouTube videos that will help you to better organize your life, stay motivated, and achieve your goals, even if your goal is not having to work 2 jobs. It sounds helpful, or at the very least, harmless. But following this advice could put you further behind for 4 reasons. The first reason is that it just doesn't work. Productivity brands and influencers have the opposite problem to finfluencers, another group that promises to fix your finances instead of everything else in your life. Good personal finance should be boring and simple. Save diligently, avoid high-interest debt, maximize your income, and invest responsibly for long-term goals. It's so simple that everything you need to know about personal finance can fit on a post-it note, and people have done it. That's a problem for personal finance influencers, because they make a lot of money by posting weekly content and can't keep saying the same thing every week, so they end up making uninformed predictions or telling financial success stories that were more a product of luck than diligent financial planning. But we have already talked enough about these guys before. Productivity influencers have the opposite problem. There is just too much to talk about, and without knowing each and every one of their viewer situations, they can't come up with good suggestions. And uninformed advice is the same thing as bad advice. A report by Psychology Today found that so-called toxic productivity is one of the leading causes of diagnosed anxiety and depression. A strong focus on productivity also produces worse outcomes for everyone. A report by the Harvard Business Review studied employees who were fired for bad workplace behavior. The study found that a large share of those terminated employees were high performers in their roles, but brought down everybody that worked with them. A strong belief in their own abilities, a strict adherence to their own routines, everybody around them made them worse at delivering good results for the business. The researchers found that a worker that had an intense focus on their own productivity might return $5,303 in cost savings to a company through increased output. Avoiding a toxic hire will net an estimated $12,489 because they collaborate more easily with coworkers and clients are less resistant to changes in the organization. An extreme focus on productivity in your personal life can also simply make you less productive as you spend all your time and effort hyper-optimizing every task in your life instead of just getting them done in a way that works for you. Despite the crazy amount of harm this can do, there are 3 terrible reasons why the cult of productivity isn't going anywhere. The number of hours Americans work has gone down over the decades according to the OECD. But at the same time, people report having less time to themselves, and there are 3 reasons for this. Technology has made our work easier, but it has also made it easier to be at work. A 2017 Gallup survey of 15,000 American workers found that 43% of people spent at least some of their personal time working remotely. No follow-up studies have been done, but that figure is likely to rise with the mass adoption of work from home from 2020 until lately. Employers are also demanding more unpaid overtime for non-hourly workers, and these requests are often coming at odd times, reducing the amount of quality, uninterrupted free time where workers are allowed to totally disconnect from their job. The psychologist Adam Alter said that if you carry around a phone that your boss or team can message or call you on at any time, you probably haven't had real free time to yourself for years. The second reason is that people who work are working less, but more people are working. A stay-at-home partner who takes care of chores, children, and other tasks is now a luxury that most people can't afford. A growing number of people are also remaining single for longer, so people have to do their jobs and their chores when they get home without the help they would have gotten in the past from more traditional family units. The third reason is simply that there are more distractions. When was the last time you felt bored? Probably a long time ago, right? Because today, right there in your pocket is a phone that gives you access to games, messages, and apps that are literally designed from the ground up to give you dopamine on demand and are hyper-optimized to keep your attention. Companies and people pushing the #hustle mindset have undoubtedly created these problems, and they are also cashing in on the opportunity to sell you the solution. And that's the third reason why the cult of toxic productivity has grown so large. It's too profitable. According to Precision Reports, a market research firm, the global market for productivity apps was worth $9.42 billion in 2022 and is expected to grow by 9.2% per year until 2028. In addition to this market, there are also people selling books, courses, consultations, and tutorials on avoiding the world's distractions and squeezing the most out of your day. It's a big market for one simple reason. People who have decided that they want to be more productive are high-intent customers, and they are willing to spend a lot of money on a good solution because they think of it as an investment rather than a purchase. If someone could give you an app or a course that would let you focus for longer and build out a side business that doubled your monthly income, of course you would pay a lot for that. People seeking out ways to maximize their productivity are also on average wealthier, as people who are into self-improvement and are short on time often are. This means that people can make millions of dollars very quickly if they can amass an audience and convince them that they have the secret to maximizing productivity. I am going to stop short of calling these a get-rich-quick scheme style grift, because I do believe that the most popular personalities in the space like Ali Abdaal, Alex Hormozi, and even Gary Vee really do have good intentions with their audience, and they don't intend any harm. Some other self-improvement personalities don't care as much and just want to get you to buy their course by any means necessary. But even these good guys still have something to sell you. It's a classic strategy of, hey, look at me, I am rich and successful, and you can be too, if you do this thing that I am selling. A video about how someone made $10 million a year and a breakdown of their revenue sources might genuinely be made with the best of intentions of transparency, but it also serves as a demonstration of how well their advice has worked for them and how it could work for you too. In the interest of my own transparency, I have made the same kind of video because I thought it was interesting and I thought it would get views. But I don't have a course on how to run multiple businesses or get big on YouTube. Some of these tools these people and companies are selling are totally free, but some can cost thousands of dollars. And with an audience that is so intent on changing their life for the better, it's not unusual for people to take on credit card debt to attend a mindset conference or buy a course that they think will change their life. Now, if you pick up some tricks that help you stay on top of your meetings or just feel less stressed about your everyday chores, that's great. And if that's worth investing some money, go ahead. But there aren't millions of people watching this with the goal of minor improvements. People are expecting something much bigger that simply can't be bought. Working out how to stay focused for every hour of the day is probably not going to radically change your life. In my career as an investment banker, I got to work directly with hundreds of very successful company founders that were raising hundreds of millions of dollars for their businesses. All of them were very busy people, but none of them tried to optimize every hour of the working day or work 100-hour weeks to make their business a success. It's also not fair to even compare regular people to highly successful business people either, because they often have assistants and other staff to take care of them, so even if they are spending long hours in the office, they have everything else in their life taken care of. And that's the third reason why falling into the productivity rabbit hole can leave you much worse off in the long run, which is that you are probably wasting your time. This works in two ways, so let's call them reason 3A and reason 3B. The first way this will end up wasting your time is that after setting up calendars, reminders, journals, meditation sessions, attending seminars, and watching productivity content, you have probably wasted more time than you will ever save with a simple plan that you work out as you go along. Reason 3B is a little bit more interesting though. Being productive is not the same as being busy. But if you're focused on not wasting any of your time, you are more likely to divert your attention to things that aren't going to do you any good. A survey conducted by 1,989 office workers in the United Kingdom found that the average person was on task for just 2 hours and 53 minutes a day. Trying to optimize that time to get more done in a day is only going to result in you being given more work to do, which is great for the company you work for, but doesn't help you much. Strong performance is important for career progression, but being the guy that does the work of 3 normal coworkers isn't the right way to show you're the right person for a promotion. Being too good at your job is also one of the leading reasons that managers have given for not promoting staff because they will be too hard to replace. Even if you are a business owner and you do financially benefit directly from every additional bit of work you get done, the mindset that a lot of productivity gurus preach is not going to make your business sustainable or scalable. The cult of productivity is weirdly split on this. Some people advocate working 100 weeks until you are a billionaire, and only then are you worthy of a day off. And some argue that if you are getting paid based on how many hours you work, you are a loser that can't properly delegate. There is no single right way to run a business, and owners usually do work more hours than their employees. But nobody can produce good quality work 100 hours every week, and not every business owner can or wants to delegate their jobs to a team, taking us back to the problem of specific advice for a broad audience. If it wasn't clear by now, it's okay to not be productive. Comparing yourself to people online who are outstandingly lucky or simply make it their career to talk about how organized they are is not going to do anything good for you. There are few things more abhorred in our world than the good old-fashioned 9-to-5 job. Everywhere you look on the internet, you will be met with advertisers and influencers telling you how you can quit the rat race by starting a business, retire early by saving and investing prodigiously, or telling your boss to shove it after your meme coins have mooned. It's a nice dream that sells well, because honestly, sometimes jobs can really suck.
I hate my job.
Commuting an hour a day to spend 8 hours in an office for 5 days a week, all with little to no flexibility, is not most people's idea of a life well spent. Especially since the dream of retirement is going the same ways as the dream of home ownership for young workers. So when an alternative is presented, it's easy to see why these ideas sell so well. But that's exactly the point. Disliking your job is just part of the sales pitch. If someone enjoys or at least appreciates their job, it's much harder to sell them an escape from it, in whatever form that may take. a get-rich-quick course, a vacation, or an overpriced piece of consumer junk that they work hard for and totally deserve. There is little to no money involved in convincing people to enjoy their jobs, so the overwhelming message they hear is that they shouldn't be enjoying this. But what if I told you your job was actually pretty great? Yep. It's time to learn how money works to discover why you should stop worrying and learn to love your 9 to 5. I myself on this channel have been critical of modern working practices, the glamorization of overworking and hustle culture, the total loss of care around staff loyalty, and the jobs themselves being complete bullshit are some of my most popular videos. It's all still true. The standard 40-hour week is an outdated relic of a bygone era, but that's also what makes it so great. The 9 to 5 is something our ancestors fought very hard for. In 1926, the Ford Motor Company introduced a 5-day 40-hour work week for its factory and office workers. This was done to appease labor unions that were protesting poor working conditions while simultaneously making Ford the most attractive employer in the highly lucrative new industry of motor vehicle manufacturing. As an added bonus, besides halting riots and attracting top talent, the 40-hour work week meant that Ford employees had the same time for recreational activities, which necessitated the use of a brand new motor car. You have probably heard this story before, but it's worth reminding yourself that a 9 to 5 schedule is something that was highly desirable and only came about because a move that most considered borderline reckless at the time. Okay, look, this is the part of the video where I say just because something was a big step forward 100 years ago doesn't mean that we should stop pushing for improvement entirely. We may have already peaked and are now starting to go backwards. In a lot of professional full-time jobs, starting early and finishing late has become the norm. So too has taking work home with you, and prestigious careers universally involve pulling long hours. Working 8-hour days, 5 days a week, as an analyst at a consulting firm, a junior at an investment bank, resident at a hospital, associate at a big law firm, or even a developer at a tech company would be a dream. These industries can get away with exploiting their highly talented young workers because they are a reliable way to make enough money to live an upper middle class or an upper class lifestyle. First-year graduates in these fields can expect to make 6 figures, and compensation escalates rapidly, with 7-figure packages being achievable within 10 years. People are willing to sacrifice their free time, their relationships, and even their health to stay on that track for as long as possible, because if they do put in the hours and work diligently, it's a sure thing.
Sweetie, maybe you need to go home.
I'm not going home. I cannot get sick right now. I have way too much to do.
But then again, there is also the darker side to this career path. To get into any of these roles, you need to go to good schools. To go to these good schools, you need to be A, decently intelligent, and B, spend a lot of money. It's a little bit different for software developers, but the way the industry is going these days, it's hard to get an entry-level 6-figure job without a college degree at minimum. For investment bankers, lawyers, and especially doctors, it's 6 figures minimum to get the schooling you need to get in on the ground floor. This feeds the vicious cycle of exploitation, because most employers know that quitting is not an option for employees that would be crushed by student debt without the 6-figure income they took the debt on to get in the first place. Mental health amongst workers in these fields is something that is really not talked about enough, especially amongst doctors who are forced to hide their mental health problems because any diagnosis could result in their board certification being revoked, causing them to lose their job that they are dependent on to meet the repayment of their student loans. Even still, for a lot of people, including myself personally, these careers are worthwhile because of how much of a sure thing they are. If you put in the hours and avoid being fired in any of these career paths, you will be rich, like top 1% rich. So why aren't you doing it? These jobs are there, and they have a very clear path of entry and progression. So why are you working the job that you currently do instead of one of these jobs? There has arguably never been a better time to go into these fields, as companies are struggling to attract talent. So why not make the switch? If it's because you enjoy your job that you work, then congratulations. I don't need to prove to you that your 9 to 5 is great. Maybe you think that it's too risky, but really, risk isn't part of it. You will have to take on a lot of debt, and maybe you won't get into the most prestigious institutions in these fields. But you are always going to make a lot of money if you dedicate your career to doing any of these things. Perhaps you are being really honest with yourself, and you think that you aren't smart enough, dedicated enough, or have enough time to go back to school and work 80-hour weeks between your other commitments. Maybe you think you just aren't in a position where you can afford to go back to school. Well, what if I told you that these were all totally legitimate justifications?
Right.
The reason that these jobs pay so well is about 20% because you need to be smart to do them, but 80% because you need to be entirely dedicated to them above anything else in your life. That 20% intelligence is probably an overestimate too. If you are willing to do anything for 80 hours a week, you are going to get very good at it. The hardest part is qualifying for limited positions at schools, but the people that make it aren't uniquely remarkable. They just work really hard. Being able to sacrifice the best years of your life is a different story though. Type the phrase, "why I quit big law," or medicine, or investment banking into Google, and you will find countless stories about people losing relationships, gaining an unhealthy amount of weight, and not being able to go to family funerals because big projects were due. Why do you think they pay them this much? You have the opportunity to do this, and if you're willing to work 80 hours a week for a decade to get into these roles, you will be rich. But you won't do it because it's hard and requires a lot of sacrifice. There is nothing wrong with this, and I wouldn't even personally recommend this career to many people. But what makes you think you would have any better luck starting your own business, which requires more sacrifice and a lower chance of financial success? You need money to live, so unless you are independently wealthy, you are going to need to do something to make money.
You listening? It's easier than you think. Every person you're on the phone with, they want to get rich, and they want to get rich quickly.
Starting your own business may sound appealing. Being your own boss, setting your own schedule, being the master of your own destiny, and above all, being able to make more money than you ever could as an employee. But wait. Starting a successful business is going to take all the same sacrifices as becoming an employee in one of the most prestigious industries from before. Sources vary widely, but most estimates say that on average, a new business will take 18 to 36 months to achieve profitability, and 5 years to achieve income comparable to an average American salary. That's the same 5 years that you couldn't spend at school because you needed the income. Starting a business will also normally involve a significant investment of money. Some of you will be lucky enough to have this, but most of you would need to borrow it. It seems more difficult to get a business loan than a student loan, and the terms and interest on a student loan are going to be much more forgiving. Then there is the simple fact that most businesses fail. And of those businesses that are successful, most are started by people that have had long careers, developing great skill sets by working a regular job. But maybe you're unfazed by all of this, because at the end of the day, having your own business still has one big advantage over working in any of these other fields, which is that you don't have anybody to answer to. People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. Working in a high-pressure environment for long hours with a boss that thinks juniors at a firm need to struggle because they had to struggle when they were a junior should be classed as a form of cruel and unusual punishment. That's a problem you won't have if you're running your own show, which is great, but you will be trading that in for something much worse. The author and anthropologist David Graeber has released several books that I highly recommend. The provocatively named Bullshit Jobs was the basis of my most successful video ever, but I don't think it is his best work. I think his best work is actually a book called The Utopia of Rules, on technology, stupidity, and the secret joys of bureaucracy. This book starts with Graeber recounting his experience signing his elderly mother up to stay at a nursing home. He was forced to work through hundreds of pages of paperwork for what would have been a simple transaction. His mother would pay a fee to the home from her savings in exchange for a room, meals, and elderly care. Despite the straightforward nature of the arrangement, Graeber was forced to sift through endless liability waivers that all needed to be signed in triplicate and witnessed by an appointed notary. Despite being a great frustration, some of this paperwork is necessary. It would be important to know, for example, if someone being checked into an elderly care home had a preferred physician or if they were on medication. But most of it wasn't. Most of the paperwork was a construct of an inherently inefficient bureaucracy, designed to keep the businesses functioning and the people in the types of jobs that one might describe as bullshit. You would probably agree that we do not live in an inherently violent society. Most of us will thankfully go our entire lives without being the victim of a violent crime, but we are still beholden to a fundamentally violent system.
See, I'm not the thief. I'm not the one charging 85 cents for a stinking soda! You're the thief!
Stray too far outside the rigid framework of the bureaucracy, and you will face legal consequences. Don't deal with those legal consequences properly, and you will face violence in the form of police enforcement. Graeber makes the case that most businesses exist because of this bureaucracy. Every page of that checklist to get his mother into a nursing home was work that kept an insurance agency, a legal firm, and a medical database manager in work. Within those businesses are bureaucracies that will necessitate employees that exist for no other reason than to tick boxes created by the bureaucracy in the first place. But now that I have said the word bureaucracy so many times that it's doing that thing where it doesn't sound like a real world anymore, why does this matter? Graeber's point is that you can be one of two people. Someone like a business owner would do well from cutting down on needless complexity within their own organization, and they will be endlessly dealing with external rules and regulations about how they can pay their staff, record their transactions, display their marketing, make their product, advertise their services, and deal with customers. Do anything wrong, and they are one step closer to society's thinly veiled threat of violence. Alternatively, you could be someone who feeds off the bureaucracy, someone who is there to tick boxes for compliance reasons and possesses the adequate certifications to make the operation legal. 9-to-5 jobs are a happy compromise for most people. They offer a safe place nestled in the fabric of society's endless rules to let people be present for a set number of hours in exchange for a set amount of money. We like to say that we hate the bureaucracy, but imagine how outraged your place of work would be if they announced that they were changing their compensation plan to a 100% performance-based system. Graeber's book was ahead of its time in how well it described the phenomenon that is being called quiet quitting. Workers who are fed up with their jobs are not quitting to find a new job or to take some time off, but instead are simply showing up to work and doing the bare minimum needed to not get fired, with many taking it a step further and doing nothing at all until they do get fired. On one hand, you go guys, fight the power. But on the other hand, imagine trying to do this as the owner of a new business. The reason that someone can stop working and not immediately be fired is because of bureaucracy. It will, in many cases, take the business a long time to realize the work isn't being done due to internal bureaucracy. And then it will take even longer to go through a termination due to external bureaucracies like labor laws. You may hate your 9-to-5, but it looks after you more than you realize.
I love the smell of commerce in the morning.
What's the difference between a workaholic and someone who works hard?
A workaholic is someone who does it compulsively, who can't not work, who feels very uncomfortable at any point where they're not, and who has difficulty, relaxing, and it affects the parts of their lives that aren't about work.
What if our survey found that 87% of people put more energy into work than their personal lives?
Let me know when your whole life goes up in smoke. When is this time for a promotion?
It's Wednesday. Everybody works on Wednesday, okay? Can I borrow your...
What would you do if you had $1 million? If you are anything like my personal hero Peter Gibbons, you would choose to do nothing at all. You would sleep in, go fishing, and watch kung fu movies all day. This attitude is apparently less popular than you might imagine, with new studies finding that most high-income earners are choosing to stay in their jobs well after they have made enough money to fund their desired retirement. But why? In a time when most American workers can't even reasonably hope to retire, why would people with the option to live a life their peers could only dream of choose not to?
This is America. Pick a job and then become the person that does it.
You all know that I hate dragging out the answer to a question just for the sake of watch time. So the simple truth is that people are both addicted to their work and feel as if they can't leave.
And I could work here for years. Years.
Why they feel this way is still a bit of a mystery, but looking at some of the leading theories tells us a concerning story about how modern careers are making even the most secure workers feel very uneasy about their futures. The first and simplest reason high-income American workers are stuck in their jobs is simply because they are no more financially secure than people on lower incomes.
Why is it so hard to just enjoy things?
A joint report by industry publication Payments.com and Lending Club found that more than a third of households earning over $250,000 per year dedicate nearly all of their income to household expenses and would not be able to cover basic necessities if they had skipped just one paycheck. The report found that 55% of millennials in these high-income jobs were struggling mainly because they were focused in high-cost-of-living areas, but even older high-income earners were not immune from spending their money as quickly as it came in. If you can't afford to quit your job, you can't quit your job. Simple as that.
I love my job, I love my job, I love my job.
You are watching a business and finance channel on YouTube, a website where you could literally be watching anything else, so I probably don't need to tell you how bad of a situation living paycheck to paycheck can be. Beyond the financial insecurity that comes with not being able to cover surprise expenses, it can also seriously hamper your career progress. High-income earners earn their high incomes because they have a rare set of skills that businesses are willing to pay a lot of money for. Sometimes these skills can be so in demand that businesses are willing to compete against one another for each other's employees. If a high-income earner living paycheck to paycheck gets offered an even better job that requires downtime between leaving and their existing job, they may end up needing to turn it down, or at the very least, take on debt, further cementing their dependence on their job. There is a great clip in the movie Margin Call, where a trading floor manager reveals how he spends his $2.5 million salary.
Will, did you really make $2.5 million last year?
Sure.
How did you spend it all?
That was quite quickly.
You learn to spend what you have in your pocket. I have personally worked with VPs and MDs that have earned this kind of money, that this scene was not a work of fiction. Even people that you would expect to be really good with money, seeing as how it's their entire career, can spend it on the stupidest shit. Alright, maybe I have been a bit unfair so far. People living paycheck to paycheck are not really addicted to work any more than they're addicted to breathing. They do it because they just need to.
I've had some experience with this. They look like they could fly. And it's not about the paycheck, it's about respect. It's about looking in the mirror and knowing that you've done something valuable with your day.
And yes, all of these high-income earners who are broke could make some changes to put themselves in a much better financial position. But they are adults, and how they live their life is up to them. If anything, they are addicted to spending, not to working.
Of all the drugs under God's blue heaven, there is one that is my absolute favorite. And I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about this.
The people who are addicted to their jobs fall into one of three categories. The first are people that just love what they do. They work in a field that they find very interesting and are normally surrounded by like-minded people. The engineers on a Formula 1 team are paid very well, but I am sure that there are some of them there that would do it for free, just because of how exciting they find the lifestyle that comes with working in this kind of environment. Good for these guys if they can find jobs like this, and not turn it into something they end up hating. Watch my video on why you actually want a really boring job to see what I mean. The second type of person who is addicted to their job normally does not enjoy it nearly as much as the first person. These are the people who have worked and studied hard their entire life to get themselves a prestigious position in their chosen field.
Life is this. I like this.
These are your doctors, lawyers, engineers, and senior management types. These people have sacrificed so much to get to where they are that their career has become their life. Their only friends are their colleagues, they don't see their family as often as they should, and they certainly don't have time for regular hobbies. The only place in life that they have in order is their career, and the only place they ever get positive feedback is at work. For some people, their work is their entire identity, and simultaneously, the most interesting thing about them. You can be a remarkably boring person, but people will still give you a lot of respect if you tell them you are a doctor or a C-suite executive at a big company. Humans are ultimately praise-driven beings. If you are seen as a big swinging dick at work, everybody praises your efforts, gives you respect, and lets you guide projects. It can be very hard to give that up just to go back and mend the other parts of your life that you have neglected to focus on your career. The saddest part of this is that these people might hate what they do, but they do it anyways because it's much easier to justify a very unhealthy lifestyle if you are making lots of money. The third type of person addicted to their work might also not really enjoy what they do, but they won't have necessarily neglected the other parts of their life. They are instead addicted to their work because the companies they work for have intentionally set them up to be. Golden handcuffs is a phrase that is all too familiar amongst high-income earners in corporate America. Top talent is quite rare and hard to find. It is also expensive. Most senior executives and advanced specialists are not performing at their best for 6 to 12 months after starting with a new company. It takes time to learn new systems, new names, new projects, and a new culture. This is a problem because most people at the top of their careers will know that long-term, it is financially much more rewarding to change jobs every 2 years. Companies do not want to pay people like this for 12 months of training just for them to jump ship as soon as they get a better offer, so they set up incentives for them to stay. This mostly comes in the form of deferred payments or bonuses that are only received for work done some number of months in the past. A high-income earner will always get their base salary, but bonuses in certain roles can be as much as 4 times that base pay. A great deal for you if you can land this type of job and perform well in it. The only catch is that these bonuses are paid out to you at some point in the future. If you quit before that time, you get nothing. Of course, the sinister part of this is that by the time you have worked long enough to get your bonus from your first year on the job, you will have 2 more years of bonuses in the pipeline that you will be eligible for in another 2 years' time. It is very easy to get stuck on an endless career treadmill, chasing a carrot that is always a few months away. Companies have other tricks to keep their top employees around, and this can often lead to people working in jobs that they hate.
Working jobs we hate, so we can buy shit we don't need.
Even if they don't need to, just because they would feel silly quitting now and leaving a bunch of money on the table. People in certain finance communities call this 1 more year syndrome, as in 1 more year I will get that big bonus, 1 more year and I will be able to afford a vacation home in retirement, 1 more year and I can fly business class on all of my retirement vacations, 1 more year and I will have a bit more financial security in retirement. There will always be reason to work just 1 more year, even for those people that do not really need the money to support themselves anymore. 1 more year quickly becomes a decade that could have been spent enjoying the lifestyle that they have worked so hard to achieve. The golden handcuffs can sometimes be self-inflicted as well.
How do they feel? Tremendous.
A lot of very highly paid jobs are extremely specialized. There are only a few dozen engineers in the world that can oversee deep-sea oil drilling projects, and their work depends on them constantly keeping up to date with the latest drilling techniques and industry standards. These people are paid extremely well, but if they ever quit, their skills will quickly become obsolete, and they will find it almost impossible to secure a role like they had before. For people like this, there is no trial run at retirement. There is no taking a year off to relax or try out a new business. They need to be committed to their career until the day that they step away. Money can solve a lot of problems, but unfortunately for many, it can't solve the problems of being stuck in a job that you hate. Side hustles are a way for people to make money alongside their normal form of employment. The promise of a side hustle is that you can earn some extra money to treat yourself to a vacation, save for a future goal, or simply to make your everyday finances less stressful. Side hustles can take on many different forms, ranging from flipping stuff on eBay to driving for Uber. Some of these hustles have the promise of making some very decent money, and alongside a boost to everyday finances, some people might maintain the dream of making their side hustle their full-time job. This dream can be particularly alluring for people that are making a side hustle out of monetizing their hobbies, who wouldn't want to be paid for doing something that they would have done for fun anyway. It's a promising concept, and it's no wonder that interest in side hustles has exploded in recent years. But if we try to be honest with ourselves, nobody wants a side hustle. Nobody gets home from a long day in the office and thinks to themselves, I can't wait to drive drunk people home from the bar or deal with customer complaints on my eBay store. No. People need side hustles, and if they are lucky, they have convinced themselves that they don't totally hate them. You have probably heard platitudes like, in order to be successful, you need multiple streams of income, or nobody ever got wealthy off a 9-to-5. And these ideas really support the idea of getting out there and working on something more than your career. Side hustles and hustle culture in general might look harmless. After all, what's the problem with motivated individuals doing a little bit of extra work to put some more money in their pockets? Maybe side hustles can do some good, and I promise I will look at some examples that do genuinely make some sense in this video. But as always, my main goal is to try to ruin a good thing and show you that this push to normalize and incentivize side hustles is something we probably shouldn't be too excited about. Now, a side hustle should ideally be able to accommodate 4 important parameters. It has to make money, otherwise it's just a hobby. It has to be doable outside your regular working hours. It has to be something you have the expertise and resources to accomplish, and if it accomplishes this, then why not make it your full-time job? Conveniently, these requirements give a would-be side hustler a checklist of very important questions they should ask themselves before starting out, but I am getting ahead of myself now. Let's start with the first one. Most side hustles are just very small businesses, and making money in business is surprisingly difficult. There is a reason why most of them fail. You can go for the easy options like driving for Uber, and you will be guaranteed a basic level of income so long as you pick up rides as they become available. But there are obviously problems with this system. You will be giving a fair chunk of your income away to the company that facilitates this work, and even if you do fully commit yourself to driving in your off hours, the income you receive from doing this is likely going to be lower than most regular jobs after factoring in additional insurance and the extra miles you put on your car. I have already made an entire video about the shortfalls of starting a business with apps like Uber, so I won't dwell on these for too long, and instead I want to look at side hustles that are more self-driven. Flipping things in online marketplaces, consulting, or doing chores like gardening are other popular options that give you the opportunity to make money without an app-based middleman. Let's go with something very simple, like mowing lawns for your neighbors on the weekend. This can make money, so it passes the first test. It's also done outside of regular working hours, so it passes the next test. And you might think that you wouldn't need much expertise and resources to set this gig up, but you might be surprised. Most lawns only need to be cut once every 2 weeks, which means if you want to make this a consistent hustle, you are going to need more than just a lawnmower and a gallon of lemonade. Before you start making any money, you are going to need to go door to door asking people if they want their lawns mowed. It sounds easy, but going door to door to sell something is a terrifying experience for 99% of people. And even people confident enough to do it would be surprised how hard it would be to find enough people to agree with your services to make wasting your weekend worth it in the first place. And yes, before you write about it in the comment section, I did have a job for 3 weeks doing door-to-door sales in college. Please don't hate me. Anyway, let's say you are made of the right stuff to go out and drum up business for your weekend lawn mowing gig, and it goes so well that you are fully booked out mowing lawns. You have to ask yourself the question of why you don't just make this your new full-time job. If you make more money at your regular job, then perhaps you would have been better served just doing some overtime. If overtime isn't a thing in your office, then perhaps finding a part-time weekend job in the same field would work for you. If you do make more money mowing lawns, then maybe your answer to this question is that you just don't want to mow lawns for more than 1 day a week. That's fair, but then why the hell are you doing this to yourself? If you enjoy mowing lawns less than your day job, then you have just signed yourself up for some well-paid torture. But there is a solution to this, which is to focus on where you added the most value in your hustle. In this example, that would be in the door-to-door sales. If you didn't hate that, then you would be best focusing on and pursuing a career in sales where you can just focus on where you're good at without a need to push a lawnmower around all weekend. Of course, this is just one example amongst the plethora of different side hustles available to you. So don't take this as career advice on building your lawn care empire, but instead let it demonstrate that most value comes from specializing in one thing and then doing that thing extremely well. An extremely good salesman who spends most of their time pushing around a lawnmower is not going to make as much money as an extremely good salesman who focuses on closing deals. A website developer will on average make more money building websites all day than they would by building their own website to try and sell socks online. This advice goes directly against what you might have heard about most millionaires having 7 different sources of income. So who's telling the truth here? Well, this claim originally comes from a 2002 study published by the IRS, which tracked 6,053 wealthy individuals who had died between 1996 and 2002. The study looked at their tax returns and found that these millionaires had 7 distinct forms of income: investment income, earned income, rental income, royalty income, capital gains, profits, and interest income. Immediately, you can start to see the problem here. Most of these income types are simply the result of being rich to begin with, not from going out and #grinding. The study also showed that most people built their wealth by building one business or focusing on one highly compensated career, which they could then use to buy up assets that would provide these other income streams. The claim that the average millionaire has an average of 7 income streams is also pushing the wording of this report to the level that it's an outright lie. Only 29% of millionaires in this study reported 5 or more streams of income, with the majority having just 3. Still impressive, but it's not out of the ordinary for a wealthy person to have a job, get some dividends, and earn some money from interest in a savings account. This rather disappointing reality is a far cry from what some people might want you to think when they say this phrase. But I'm sorry, nobody really gets rich by doing half a dozen jobs. There is also one other problem with drawing any conclusions from this study, which is becoming a common theme for this channel, and that is selection bias. This study looked at people that died between 1996 and 2002. Most people die when they're old older people, especially rich older people, have had more time to accumulate assets to diversify their income away from their primary earned income. Most of you watching are a long way from death, hopefully. And 99% of people that achieve massive financial success at a young age do it by maxing out one income stream. Or, getting a nice inheritance. That works too. So, if the common belief about multiple income streams is not true, why then do you see it repeated everywhere? The cynic in me wants to say that a lot of people spouting this nonsense have some kind of hidden interest in selling you a course or something on building out your next income stream. And that's definitely part of it. But honestly, I think that most people that perpetuate these ideas are people who genuinely need to believe it's true. Young workers have never known a world with the level of job security, career progression, and opportunities available to the generations that came before them. Having a backup form of income in case you get fired out of the blue one day no longer sounds like doomsday prepping, it's just prudent advice. I am also well aware of people that need multiple gigs to support themselves and their families because they don't receive enough income from their main job. But to be fair, this should be called what it is, which is working multiple jobs. To call what someone is doing in these situations a side hustle is just sugarcoating a shitty situation. So, despite what I have said so far, I don't want you to brush the whole idea of side hustles off. I just want to make sure you are asking these questions, so you can avoid wasting your time working just to make some guru or tech company rich. So, what would a decent side hustle look like? I have no doubt that some people have already left comments pointing out how hypocritical it is of me to point out the shortcomings of side hustle culture on a YouTube channel that is literally my side hustle. But I do practice what I preach, and I did ask these questions before I started making videos. Does YouTube have the potential to make money? Yes. It's by no means a guarantee, but if you work hard and are extremely lucky, it can be very rewarding. Is it doable outside my regular working hours? Yes, I can make videos any time of day. Do I have the expertise to make it work? Yes. I work in banking, so I have experience on the subject matter of my channel, and I did some online courses in video editing. As for the question, why not make it my full-time job? Well, I want to, and it's hopefully something I will be able to do full-time this year. I didn't start this as a side hustle. I started this as something I wanted to make my primary business. Building a business on the side of your regular job is a great way to try things out. It lets you experience what running a business is like, and it's much less risky than going all in and depending on the success of a new business to put food on the table. But what are some things that make sense to do if your plans are to just keep your day job long term? There are actually a few. Take an example like credit card churning. This is where you will sign up for new credit cards, spend money you normally would on living expenses to qualify for sign-up bonuses, and then exchange those bonus points for cash. Anybody with decent credit can do this. It only takes a few minutes to fill out an application form, and some bonuses can be worth thousands of dollars. There are examples of people making this their full-time jobs. In fact, I made a video about a man who did just that last week. But unless you find a loophole in the system, you are really limited by the amount of the sign-up promotions on offer and how many credit cards the bank will let you have open at any given time. Credit card churning is just one example of a side hustle that actually does make sense. And I'm not even saying it's the best one, but it works to show that if you ask these questions before starting a new project, you won't be sucked into doing something you hate because some schmuck on the internet said you should be working 120 hours a week in your 20s. Investing is the most important thing you can do to reliably build wealth during your life. The problem is, you inevitably suck at it.
You hate Wall Street, but maybe it's time to quit.
I love my job.
You hate your job.
I love my job.
You're miserable.
I love my job. I love my job, honey.
The S&P 500 has a historical average return of 10.4% over the past 100 years, even when including all of the major stock market downturns during that time. $10,000 invested in 1972 would be worth $1.7 million today. But look around, and you will be hard-pressed to find anybody that has made themselves wealthy exclusively through diligent investing practices. Research done by Dalbar Inc., an investment research firm, found that the average equity fund investor only made an average annualized return of 4.25% over the past 20 years. To understand how big of a difference this truly is, the same investor getting those returns would only turn their initial $10,000 investment into $83,000 today over the same 50-year period. The only real solution is to stop trying.
I need the money.
Investing is a hyper-logical procedure where the end goal is to turn your initial supply of money into as much money as possible. The trick to doing this is very simple. If you put that money into ventures that become worth a lot of money, produce a lot of income, or preferably both, you will be investing well. Most investments don't generate returns in a totally predictable way, and other years the company might pay out nothing. Similarly, there will be some years where the shares in the company are trading at all-time highs, and there will be other times when they are trading down by 50%. This is simply what investors call risk, which I am sure I probably don't really need to explain to any of you, because you all know what risk is, right? Well, you might know what it is, but I guarantee that you are terrible at dealing with it.
F you, Sam. Will you give me a fucking break? Excuse me.
Our monkey brains have evolved over millions of years to avoid risk, even if it means foregoing a reward. Securing yourself a tasty snack was not worth being eaten by a lion, which meant that only the more cowardly monkey survived. The problem is that you need almost the opposite mentality to be a good investor, but let's see how you do. Assume there are 3 investors: Mr. Lucky, Mr. Unfortunate, and Mr. Consistent. Each of these men are going to put $1,000 a year into their stock portfolios, but they are going to do it in slightly different ways. Mr. Lucky lives up to his name, and he invests his $1,000 at the absolute bottom of the market every year, which means for the remaining days in that year, his investment is only going to go up. Mr. Unfortunate does the exact opposite. He also tries to time the market, but screws it up royally. He invests at the very top of the market every single year. This means that the remaining days in the year, his investment can only go down. He takes $1,000 and puts it into the market on the first trading day of the year and then forgets about the market for the next 12 months. None of these investors sell any of their shares, and they reinvest their dividends straight away back into their portfolios. Now, who do you think would have the biggest portfolio after 30 years of investing?
Who the knows, right?
Lock in your answers now. I'll give you a hint. It's obviously not Mr. Unlucky, although he probably doesn't do as bad as you might expect. Even with his terrible year-on-year luck, he still comes out well ahead after 3 decades, earning an annualized 8.7% ROI, which meant that his $30,000 total investment would be worth $137,725. The reasonable choice would be Mr. Lucky. After all, he picked the best day to invest every single year. He did earn impressive returns of 9.6%, which means his portfolio is now worth $165,552, or almost $30,000 more than Mr. Unfortunate. Particularly impressive when you remember he only used $30,000 of his own money to grow this portfolio. But what about Mr. Consistent? Well, he may not have had the market timing skill of Mr. Lucky, but he had something else on his side: time in the market. You see, while Mr. Lucky was waiting around for the very best day to deploy his capital, he was missing out on dividends that could have boosted his total returns. By investing money as soon as he could, Mr. Consistent ensured that he got every dividend possible, which more than made up for the total down days he would have to ride out. Mr. Consistent made annualized returns of 10.2%, giving him a portfolio value of $187,580 after 30 years. This thought experiment was first presented by Peter Lynch, one of the greatest investors of all time, and he used it to demonstrate that time in the market beats timing in the market if you are an absolute genius that can pick the bottom of the market perfectly.
Dangerous when they invest. This word, play the market. That's a dangerous term.
In the age of cryptocurrencies and hype stocks, we have normalized vertical price charts as something you should expect if you are a good investor. Sorry to ruin the fun, but good investments shouldn't moon overnight. And extreme price volatility is really only the sign of a very unhealthy investment. If it can go vertically in the direction you want, it can also go vertically in the direction you don't want. Established companies with not much room to grow are also great investments, even though their stock price might trade flat over the long term. If a company has grown as much as it can, returning money to shareholders is a much better decision than looking for new ways to spend that money on growth that isn't needed or isn't possible. Over 40% of the growth from the broad US stock market in the past 100 years has come from dividends. All of this demonstrates that just getting into the market, even if it's at the worst possible time, isn't going to be that bad in the long run if you hold on to your investments. I should mention that Peter Lynch probably cherry-picked the years that he ran this experiment to give himself the outcome that proved his point, and that follow-up studies have shown the more logical result of Mr. Lucky coming out slightly ahead, but that's not really the point anyway. The big deal here is that long-term, these investors all did roughly as well as each other regardless of short-term gains or losses. Humans are inherently oversensitive to short-term risks, but undersensitive to long-term risks. It's why we smoke and eat sugary food that we know is going to eventually kill us, but still get scared at flying in a plane that is probably perfectly safe.
Nervous?
Yes.
Monkey brain is programmed to keep you alive day by day. Monkey brain don't work very well conceptualizing risks over decades. The biggest long-term risk you have while investing is missing out on long-term gains, and a surefire way to avoid that risk is to invest as early and consistently as you can. But the risk of seeing red numbers on our brokerage account keeps you from doing it. Our monkey brains also sabotage our portfolios by encouraging us to participate in herd mentality. In the wild, there is safety in numbers. If your monkey buddies find a new territory full of food, you would be best off following them. If nothing else, the lion might eat one of your buddies instead of you. We can see a similar herd mentality all of the time in investment markets. My good friend Patrick Boyle recently released a video on Cathie Wood's ARK Invest where he demonstrates the core problem with the returns she generated for her investors. ARK's innovation fund is now doing roughly as well as the broad market, which by itself is perfectly acceptable. The problem is that in 2021, her fund was up 150% and making headlines throughout the investment world. If you were an investor in Cathie from day one, you would be doing okay for yourself right now. But most people didn't invest with her on day one. Most people started investing in her when she was making headlines about triple-digit returns. There were a number of market forces that pushed the value of this index back down, all of which Patrick explores perfectly in his video. But all that is important for now is that even though the index was still up by a respectable margin, most of Cathie's investors had suffered devastating losses.
Right now, it is ugly times ugly. And that's when the ugly get going.
I shouldn't pick on Cathie exclusively. The same kind of net loser effect is going on in lots of markets right now. If you bought Bitcoin when it was worth less than $1, you are still doing extremely well for yourself. But most people bought Bitcoin when it was worth more than it is now. So even though the asset is up millions of percent since inception, most investors are still net losers. Our monkey brains want us to follow the herd. But in the investment world, that just translates to buying assets once hype has pushed their prices to all-time highs. I get it. It's hard not to follow the herd when investing, because finance is a really complicated subject. Making decisions yourself is probably going to do more damage than simply sticking with the pack. There are not many people who have consistently outperformed the market over an extended period of time. Of those that have, a good amount just got really lucky. A lot were insider trading, and those that genuinely beat the market with their own skill were mostly certified geniuses that transformed the investment landscape. You are watching a video on the dynamics of human psychology and investing, so you are probably smarter than most. But you are not smarter than someone like Jim Simons and his team of PhD analysts. The good news is that you don't need to be. The secret to good investing was right there in the thumbnail. Stop trying. That doesn't mean stop investing, but it does mean stop trying so hard. You can fit everything you need to know about personal finance onto a post-it note, but that makes it hard to sell courses, investment products, self-help books, and NFT projects to people who think they can outsmart the market. A 2020 report found that 90% of actively managed funds failed to outperform the market over a 15-year period. So if the smartest investors with Ivy League degrees fail to do so, why do you think that buying a day trading course will help you? I'm sorry, you can't.
I cannot f***ing believe this shit.
Invest consistently, invest broadly, and invest for the long term, and you are going to do better than almost everybody else that spends their lives chasing the overhyped flavor of the month investment that promises its investors rich but only ends up putting them behind.
Do you have $27,000 to spend on coffee? Because I don't. I mean, I really don't.
Only McDonald's is bigger than Starbucks when it comes to market caps. So they are really a powerhouse when it comes to really the whole restaurant industry.
If you instead just put that $3 to $5 you're spending every day on coffee into a Roth IRA and let that compound over the next 40 years in an index fund, you'd have over $1 million. Now, how does that make you feel that your daily cup of coffee is leaving $1 million on the table?
Never do I do that. Never. That's such a waste of money for something that costs 20 cents.
Spending more money on coffee than you do on retirement is ridiculous.
A 2022 survey conducted by the Lending Club Bank found that more than a third of people earning over $250,000 a year were living paycheck to paycheck. And if someone earning 4 to 5 times the national average can't get ahead, then what hope do the rest of us have? A popular trend amongst financial influencers is to blame people's poor personal money situations on small but repetitive purchases, with the number one target being coffees. I mean, seriously, it feels like anybody that has ever posted a video about how to make $100 a day in the current year with little to no experience or trade stock options for a profit seems to hate coffees as much as they hate the efficient market hypothesis.
I'm not saying you guys should go out and buy this fancy machine,
But I mean, if you could stop drinking coffee or maybe invest in something like this, you would save a lot of money down the line.
But is that daily Starbucks actually making things like paying off debt, buying a house, and saving for retirement impossible? Well, anybody who watches my channel regularly will know that I don't like dragging out the answers to simple questions. And also, you can read the title of the video. So no, that Daily Cup of Joe is not doing anybody any significant financial harm. People like to say that it will for 5 honestly pretty terrible reasons. And if you listen too closely to the people hating on your morning pickup, it might end up hurting your personal finances more than the Starbucks ever could. The first reason that people like to say coffee is costing you your financial future is that it's a widely applicable statement to the broadest possible audience. Most market research reports suggest that roughly 3/4 of people drink coffee every day. If you are writing a book on personal finance or trying to build an audience by giving out broad general financial advice, it only makes sense to go after an obvious expense that for a lot of people is their one daily luxury to help them get through the working week. It's a really effective strategy because it immediately shifts the blame directly onto the person seeking out financial advice, and it gives them an easily actionable strategy that can start the very next day. Something so simple and easy to start is a great marketing hook to capture people's attention to either get watch time on a video, sell a book, or promote an upcoming seminar. The attention-grabbing hook of a coffee a day is costing you your financial future works especially well when it's combined with a dubious calculation using compounded interest. A $5 coffee every day is costing you $35 a week. If you invested that for 40 years in a portfolio making 10%, then in 40 years you would have almost $1 million. The math checks out. You can do it yourself using any compounded interest calculator on the internet, but it makes a lot of assumptions that are terrible and would never be made by a real financial professional. 10% is the approximate rate of return for the S&P 500 over the past 50 years, but that has been an exceptionally good run. It's highly likely that those returns will be lower in the future. A good financial professional looking that far ahead should include that likelihood in their projections. Even if returns do stay the same, the average investor typically makes less than half of these returns. A study conducted by the investment research firm Dalbar Inc. found that the average retail investor made a return of just 4.25%. The reason that investors fall so far behind the returns of a strategy, which is as simple as buying stocks regularly and literally doing nothing else, is because they move in and out of the market too often, because they think that they can predict the future and capitalize on market movements, which they can't, or because they need money held up in an investment account to cover a shortfall in their everyday budget. If someone is in a financial position where their $5 for their everyday coffee is the only money they can save to make contributions towards their retirement savings, they are likely not going to be able to grow their account before it becomes too tempting to access to cover an unexpected expense. The daily coffee equation also doesn't include inflation or taxes that will both eat into this figure considerably. Using a more realistic compounding factor of 3%, giving up the daily coffee and putting it all into an equity portfolio would net you just under $140,000 after taxes, hidden or direct trading fees, inflation, and realistic portfolio management. $140,000 is still a lot of money, but it's not going to fund anybody's retirement. In 40 years' time, it might struggle to even make a down payment on a basic home. The second reason that people like to blame coffee and other minor expenses on people's financial troubles is because it's relatable and oh so easy to pick on. We see people with a Starbucks cup in their hand complaining about how poor they are, and we get angry without realizing that it's not going to make any difference, and that's because of reason 3. Reason 3 is that cutting minor expenses to achieve major financial goals used to be good financial advice, but it's become much less relevant today. The price of a house, a car, an education, and a retirement have all outpaced the cost of regular expenses like a cup of coffee considerably. People on low incomes used to be able to make small sacrifices to make major purchases, but now those same goals are simply out of reach no matter how many coffees they make at home. Someone working a full-time minimum wage job can no longer afford to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in any county in the entire country, and they can only afford a 1-bedroom apartment in 7% of the counties with the lowest job opportunities and lowest access to community services.
And we're heading straight to another housing crash worse than 2008.
Buying a house can sometimes be cheaper than renting it, but saving a deposit or building up creditworthiness is next to impossible for people that can't even afford to live. The news isn't much better for high-income earners either, even if it is a lot harder to feel sorry for them. The reason that 1/3 of people earning over $250,000 a year and 65% of millennials earning that much are living paycheck to paycheck is because they are paying off the student debt that they needed to take on to access their high-paying careers, and they are forced to live in high-cost-of-living cities like New York, Seattle, or San Francisco, where they have access to the highest-paying jobs. People earning $250,000 a year at a young age are also going to succumb to lifestyle inflation, which is what happens when their income grows and they increase their living expenses right along with it. Most of the time, this is caused by high-income earners running on the hedonic treadmill, which is the observed tendency of humans to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events or life changes. In non-Freudian speak, when you are making $30,000 a year, a $50,000 car would be a dreamy luxury. If you are earning $250,000 a year in an office where everybody else is earning the same or more, a $50,000 car is nothing special. It's hard to feel bad about this, but sometimes lifestyle inflation is purely involuntary and is the result of trying to maintain appearances with their colleagues who are also earning a lot of money. And sometimes it's just the result of the costs involved with maintaining these high-end careers. I know I don't mention it very often on this channel, but I used to work in investment banking, and even at a small boutique firm, it was expected that you would have a wardrobe of nice suits, live in close proximity to the office, and be able to pay for childcare or a live-in nanny so that looking after your children was never an excuse to miss a client deadline. It was not mandatory, but it was also heavily encouraged that employees invest heavily into networking opportunities by paying for membership at expensive clubs. For people like this, that coffee is not going to change their finances at all. Reason number 4 that finfluencers like to pick on coffee is that it's a really effective sales tool to pitch whatever they are selling. Some of these programs can be genuinely fantastic, and some can be outright scams. I would need a whole separate video to go over everything that finfluencers pitch to their audiences, but the point here is that they know that telling people to cut out a coffee a day is not going to change their personal finances, but it might change their decision to sign up for their course. The 5th reason that every personal finance personality picks on the daily cup of Starbucks is because every other personal finance personality does the same. Most of the biggest names in the finance space have no professional training in the topics they are talking about, which is fine. Talking about personal finance on the internet shouldn't be off limits to anybody without a certification. But without that practical experience, these people struggle to challenge the traditional hive mind of how personal finance really works. But even if it's not the best advice, and even if it's not made with the best intentions, you might think that telling people to cut down on discretionary expenses like a coffee from Starbucks isn't going to do them any harm. But it could, actually. If someone sets out to improve their financial situation by focusing on minor luxuries first, they might be setting themselves up for failure. Not only are these changes not going to be big enough to really help anybody, but they can lead to something called willpower fatigue. This is what happens when people are forced to exercise their willpower consistently on small things, which wears it out and makes them less likely to make good decisions on big things. Someone that is proud of themselves for making coffee at home all week will have less power left to say no going out for an expensive dinner on a Friday night. It's also a band-aid solution that can distract people from making changes that are harder but are so much more rewarding. The inconvenient truth that nobody on the internet wants to tell people is that if you are earning less than $50,000 a year in almost any part of the country, the only way that you are ever going to be financially successful is by earning more money. Going back to school, changing careers, or moving to a place with more opportunity is much harder to do than buying an espresso machine. But it really is the only way. You simply cannot build wealth on $50,000 a year anymore unless you are lottery winner level lucky. If that wasn't controversial enough, I personally think that this number could be as high as $100,000 a year depending on what city you live in and what you define as financial success. The fact that people doing some of our most crucial jobs fall below this level is really a problem, and there really should be something done about that. But until something changes, that's just the reality people need to work with. Some jobs will just not fund a comfortable life anymore. You won't hear many finfluencers say this because it immediately turns off most people who just want a simple solution to a very difficult problem. And while I'm telling you things that you don't want to hear, $250,000 a year does not make you rich anymore. There is an income level where people have so much money coming in that they can brute force their way through bad financial decisions. $250,000 a year used to be comfortably in that range, but it's just not anymore. If you are living in a high cost of living area, $250,000 a year can give you a comfortable life, but not a luxurious one, and not one free of financial stress. If you are lucky enough to find yourself in this sort of position, the first thing you have to realize is that you are not rich, and you can't keep up with everybody around you because more than a third of them are financially struggling too. But at least you can enjoy your coffee guilt-free. The last thing you have to realize is that you will be working forever no matter how much you get your finances on track. So if I don't make you angry enough with this video, go and watch my other video on why you will never retire.